Hey, this is David Hayter. You may know me as the screenwriter of films like X-Men, X-Men 2, and Watchmen, but you probably know me best as the voice of Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. And you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. Kept you waiting, huh?
All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Kasanova, and today I've got the honor, the privilege of having the one, the only Kevin Kenson on the show. Kevin, how you doing today? How you living?
I'm doing great. I think I can actually confirm I am the only Kevin Kenson. I looked into this before. Also, I probably should have said this before we started recording, but I love that David Hayter intro that you got going on right now. My favorite thing is that you like, I'm guessing this was like a cameo setup or something like that, but just the fact that oh no, really? You just kind of hit him up and...
He's one of my friends, actually.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I just love that you have him front load with screenwriter, you know, like that's, because it's, look, we know, but Solid Snake's when everyone's waiting for like the reference. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, screenwriter, yeah, but also... You know, I remember you from Guyver way back when.
I know, right? Like, there's when I have him on my show, he's like, "Yo, can we talk about Guyver a lot?" I was like, "If you want," I'm like, "Dude, you can talk about whatever you want." Yeah, I've known David for a couple years now. I actually met him through one of my other friends. I'm friends with Gerald C. Rivers, who voices in Bison and Street Fighter. So that's one of my good friends. And 6 degrees separation, we got linked up. I met him. And then just been really, really close friends ever since. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
that's super cool.
Yeah. So dude, how you doing? How's everything going? Like, I know we just had, at the time of this recording, we just had the Nintendo Direct. There's a lot of things that were announced. Gaming's been crazy lately. We've had a lot of ups. We've had some weird things with other games last year, Cyberpunk 2077, but hey.
I mean, honestly, like the good, the bad, but more than anything, definitely the weird, right? I mean, part of it is, Cyberpunk was a lot of reasons. Yeah. But more than anything, I mean, just how COVID's impacting everything, just as far as game releases are all over the place and no one knows what's going to get announced when and when things are going to get pushed back till, because it's all, even though there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel for that whole situation, I feel like a lot of people really underestimate how big of a hit it did on everyone's timelines for what they're working on, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this year goes. But, for me personally, I'm doing really good, actually. I kind of had 2020 was certainly a year, but I've been on a real big upswing the last couple months. Been feeling really good about my content lately. And it's just been, I've been in a really good headspace lately, to be honest. Like, really good. Yeah.
Awesome, man. And if you don't mind, go ahead, dude. The mic is yours. The floor is yours. If you don't mind introducing yourself, man. Like, tell people about yourself, where they can find you, and and then we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah. So I am Kevin Kenson. You can find me primarily on YouTube with the very difficult to find and creative name of Kevin Kenson. Did not really put much thought into that. Well, it was kind of intentional, but like I've never been good at being like, oh, this is gonna be my title. This is the thing I go by. Like it's never really been my thing. I think even back in the day when there was instant messaging, it was just like Kevin, like that's me. But yeah, so I'm primarily on YouTube where I make gaming focused content. I wish I could give you some kind of short version of like what I cover, but it's kind of all over the place. Sometimes it's news, sometimes it's product reviews. I don't necessarily focus too much on individual games outside of doing lists, primarily just because a lot of people do that and it's a crowded space. Every now and then I'll kind of throw it out there to be like, anyone want to watch this? And then it gets 80% less views. So I really focus on just kind of being a little more all over the place, whatever's kind of catching my attention in gaming. but yeah, that's where I'm mostly active. I've also been talking a lot more on Twitter lately, just kind of reacting to stuff and that kind of deal. I also post on Instagram. But yeah, that's, I've been doing YouTube for probably 11 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was part-time and on another channel. I mean, I was probably putting up like a video a month, something like that. And it was really only until about 6.5 years ago that I went full-time, where it became like, this is my job. I'm uploading regularly. Like, I'm going all in on this. I'm leaving GameStop, not dealing with that anymore. And really just put all my time into doing that content.
Isn't it crazy to think like 11 years you've been doing this, like on the platform, and then 6 years you've been doing this full time? Like, how has that been, like, as far as like life change, career change?
Surreal, to be honest. I mean, like, I always feel weird talking about how I got into everything, because I feel like I've talked to a lot of other creators and they have so many inspiring, great stories. I feel like mine really isn't that, to be honest. When I started back in 2010 as kind of part-time, it was really sort of a like, sure, like, let's do it. So are you familiar with Jonathan Morrison, TLD Today? Yeah. So I got my start on TLD Today as a kind of secondary host. I just made a video once every month or so. And the real reason for that is because behind the scenes, TLD Today is a project that was worked on with John as the host, and my brother, Josh, as kind of the behind the scenes guy, kind of just helping everything get off the ground floor. And he actually had a channel before even that was a music one that we stopped doing because that was the early days of YouTube, and they were very weird about copyright back then. I mean, they still are, but they were extra about it. What ended really happening too is he was doing covers, and YouTube kind of had an ultimatum point where it's like, hey, if we catch like any of your stuff breaking copyright, we're just going to close all your stuff down. And all those channels were connected. So we were like, the tech channel's doing well. Let's maybe not mess that up by having the music channel get us in trouble. So we leaned all in on that. And, this was the early days of YouTube, and no one really knew what they were doing yet as far as what is consistent content, what is like, how do you construct a channel? Everyone was just kind of blindly figuring it out. And so a lot of people at the time, it being a tech channel, people were asking like, oh, are you guys going to do games? Are you going to do game coverage? And John was like, I don't know. Like, I play NBA. Like, I don't know what else. Like, what do you guys want me to talk about? And so I don't think I had graduated yet, but I was just finishing up college. And I was part of that generation of early millennials where you kind of went to college because that was the thing you should do to be successful. And I didn't really have a plan outside of that very well. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can like do this thing too and like try out YouTube. And so I really just kind of, it was a lot of just opportunity, timing, and luck that I started it. And then after doing that part-time for a while, TLD was doing well enough that we were kind of like, hey, do you just want to spin off your own channel and like go all in? And at that time, I was about 3 years into working at GameStop. I was like, yes, I do. I absolutely want to do that. Like, all the effort there versus dealing with a 9-to-5 with one of the worst corporate structures I've worked under. Yeah, that sounds great. So, that's when I kind of took the full plunge, and it was a little slow going at first. And it wasn't until about early 17 that things really took off. We did a little bit of a creative change in what I was doing. There was a lot more effort put into a lot of the edits and shot composition and stuff. I started working more with the team, and that's really where stuff, like, I was definitely plateauing at like, probably, I don't know, like 15K subs or something for a long time. And it wasn't until then that you really like, you can look at the Social Blade graphs, like you see where that growth begins, and where things really start to change and pick up.
Yeah. Dude, I fully understand like the whole GameStop thing. I did that right at the tail end of college, because we're around the same age, I believe. And so like, coming out of college, I think I was in GameStop for like a year and a half, and that's a terrible. I have stories. I know you have stories.
I worked at a mall location, so I assure you, I have stories. That's a whole different animal too. Like, people will talk bad about experiences at GameStop. Mall locations are a whole nother thing.
Yep.
Because you are not only a GameStop, you are a daycare.
Mm-hmm.
You are a one stop for people who you're the stop for everyone who doesn't really pay attention to games, like a lot of the grandparents and family members. Or it's a whole different animal.
Can you imagine being there now and like a parent or a grandparent going in and being like, "Oh, I want the new Xbox." And like, "Oh, you want the Xbox One, the One X, the One S, the Series X, Series X? Oh, no, I just want the new one."
None of these are open. I don't know. Like, exactly. That's Well, I mean, actually I did deal with that a little bit because I want to say I was still there when the Wii U launched.
Oh,
so
God, yeah.
That was a whole thing of trying to differentiate. Like, no, this is not. It's not just the tablet. It's like a whole new thing. It's new. This isn't just a Wii. You cannot play this Wii U game on your Wii. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was. I mean, we give jokes. People make jokes right now about Xbox and mixed up marketing, which is absolutely deserved. But I don't know if anything will top Wii and Wii U because that was such a confused message.
It was incredibly like a terrible message that they were putting out as far as like the differentiating the Wii U, and just the marketing, because they never really showed the console. They always showed the tablet. And it's like a lot of people thought, okay, so this is just a tablet that I buy and just add to the Wii. You know, for those of you who may not know, that's it's kind of how it was back then. So it was like, oh no, it's a whole nother system. Then there was a whole storage limitation issued for the longest. Like, why did they make an 8 gig one? Like,
it didn't make any sense at the time. Like, it really didn't. And it's not like they made an 8 gig one with like a super well done plan built in for expanding that. It was just sort of like, you just got to do this, like buy an SD card or something. Like, it was really poorly communicated, and it was messy. And I say this as someone who actually, especially back then, I sang that system's praises. Like, I love the Wii U as a platform. I am oftentimes very saddened by the fact that I don't think any companies really took full advantage of what they could with it. I loved the potential of that system. I love a lot of the first-party games that were released on it. And I mean, clearly they were great games because they currently make up half the top-selling Switch games. You know, like, I loved the potential the Wii U had. It had a lot of problems that I'm not going to gloss over, obviously. Yeah. But that's one of those systems, man, where I wish it hit right, you know, because there was something different about what you could do with that setup.
Yeah. You know, you look at like with Nintendo, with with the Wii U to the Switch and even the GameCube to the Wii, like how they take what really it didn't work on the previous console and a lot of the same games, and they'll re-release it, and it just does exponentially well on the newer platform. Like the whole concept of what the Switch was basically the Wii U. I like to say the Wii U was like our beta. We were the beta testers. Like, yeah, this is the idea of what we want to do. This is where we're going with it. But we're not going to really give you much support as far as games for the longest, but the few we'll put out there first party will be stellar. Okay.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah. Well, and that was the problem too, right? There was no third-party support whatsoever, and that they were so acutely aware of that because when the Switch premiered, when they debuted the Switch in that like early commercial setup, like one of the first things they show is playing Skyrim on it.
Yeah,
you know, like I mean, this game is like 6 years old at the time, but it's just this immediate like look, Bethesda supports us. You know, I want to say there was, I don't remember the exact game, but there was like a sports title in there too. I don't know if it was like NBA 2K or something.
Yeah,
but they had that in the initial trailer. Like they were really making sure to be like, hey guys, look, it's not just going to be us this time. Like other companies are on board. Trust me. And the thing about the Switch too is like it's that initial reveal had it invoked this immediate reaction in people, because I even remember before they did the official unveiling, most people already kind of figured out what the shtick was going to be. There was a lot of early patents that were kind of leaked. People kind of put it together. And while we didn't have a perfect picture of it yet, this whole idea of, switch between mobile and TV, yeah, like that's the big shtick. Okay, whatever, sure. But the moment they show it in that commercial where it's, playing on a handheld, drop it in, now it's on the TV in like less than a second, everyone lost their minds.
Yeah.
I think it was different to see it and how it worked.
Oh man, do you there's been all these rumors over the years of like the Switch Pro. Do you think we're ever going to get to that point where I feel like we're hitting a point where Nintendo's going to have to make a hardware revision that's slightly more powerful, but I don't know. Like, do you think we're close to that?
This is such a cluster of a situation. So first off, like, if anyone's watching my channel, they know that I've talked about this a lot. I talked about it as early as like early 2018, just because there was something a lot of people were asking for. And I myself have gone in waves of what I think about this. And there was a point in time, I think especially after the One X and PS4 Pro launched, that I was kind of riding the high of those 0.5 systems. And Nintendo does have their own history kind of with this, with the new 3DS. So I was really riding this feeling of like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense they would do this. And as more time has passed, I've really become a lot more skeptical about it. And I think a very important part of this to talk about is the fact that if there is anything consistent about Nintendo, it's that they do not care about what analysts or honestly even what fans have to say most of the time. Like, Nintendo is gonna do Nintendo, and sometimes it works out beautifully, like with the Switch, and sometimes it really doesn't at all. They just have their own plan, and they're gonna follow it either way. So on the subject of a Switch, of a Switch Pro, I don't think it's impossible by any means. I really do think there's a possibility of it existing. What I think doesn't always get talked about enough in that realm is what exactly does that mean, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they talk about Switch Pro in terms of a wish list or what they want it to be, they literally just want like the better Switch. They want, I want 1080p screen, I want a smaller bezel, give me that Bluetooth audio support and 4K when it's docked and all this kind of stuff. And I really don't see Nintendo actually doing that. And if they do, I see it as being some kind of proper further down the line replacement, right? Not like a 0.5 system. I see that being the Switch 2 or whatever, if they were to go that route. Really, personally, I think if Nintendo does do some kind of 0.5 more powerful version, I could really see them going more the route of doing basically an opposite version of the Switch Lite. This has been something a lot of people have talked about with the idea of like a Switch TV, where it's just a permadock option. You get the 4K, you get the better performance. It doesn't cost quite a crazy amount higher because guess what? Now they don't have to worry about a screen. They don't have to worry about, necessarily having attached on Joy-Cons. Like, there's a lot that ends up simplifying the costs of that. But again, Nintendo is, if anything, not predictable. So that's one of those things where I'm like, oh, that makes sense to me. And that probably means it's actually not going to happen. Yeah, it's a mess. Like, I feel like any discussion of the Switch Pro pretty much has to always be it has to be accompanied by the fact that, to be honest, none of us know. No one does. A lot of people will talk like they are, an insider or someone who has looked at the data and sees how this makes sense. And it's all conjecture. And I think that works great with PlayStation and Xbox. I think those are the kind of companies that do pay attention to trends and are like, oh yeah, this is a big thing right now. And you could even see how that guided some of their less good decisions back with the PS3 and 360, because that was all, oh wow, we didn't think that Wii would be successful. People like motion gaming, let's hop on that. They're very reactive to what trends are. Nintendo isn't. Nintendo just does what they think is cool, and again, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, like the Wii U, So it's frustrating. It's a weird thing. Absolutely.
So, and we recently, as at the time of this recording, we had the latest Nintendo Direct on the 17th. What were your thoughts on that? So it's social media has been all over the place with people loving it or hating it. I didn't hate it. I just was like, okay, there's a lot of re-releases of older titles. That's fine. My biggest disappointment is the fact that we didn't get any type of announcement for Zelda's 35th. Yeah.
So I did a reaction video to this, and I've been pretty vocal about it on Twitter over the last 24 hours. Personally, I loved the presentation, but I also always immediately followed it up with I know that I was the accidental perfect target audience for a lot of the announcements they made yesterday. And I can totally see everyone else being disappointed, especially with the kind of extra weight that comes with this is the first regular Nintendo Nintendo Direct in a year and a half. We had all the partner ones. We had a few game-specific ones for Animal Crossing and Pokemon. This was the first just flat-out Nintendo Direct, no qualifiers. It's almost an hour long. And I think part of the reason why Nintendo even announced it the day before was because they wanted to give everyone the least amount of time possible to try and build up extra hype in their heads, because they know that happens every direct, and it's never going to live up to what everyone wants ever. I would say, objectively, which is a very loaded term in gaming when talking about stuff like this, I think it was a medium one. I definitely think there's been worse. There's absolutely been better as far as crowd pleasers. But I personally walked away loving it. And a large reason for that for me is, my background in gaming and what I really enjoy playing. I'm a big JRPG head. Like that is what I play. I play lots of other stuff too, but at the end of the day, if it's like, you can only take, I got to buy only one of these releases coming out this month. Like for me this month, it's like, it's Bravely Default or Persona Strikers, I guess. Like one of those two. Like that's like hands down easy. So, yesterday seeing Legend of Mana again, it's a port, it's a re-release, but it's my favorite PS1 classics that's not accessible to a lot of people unless you own a Vita or a PS3, I guess, really, if you're still using that, you can get it digitally there. And Project Triangle Strategy, which is by far one of the dumbest names I find myself typing all the time right now. That game is like it's like someone set up a checkmark list of all the things I like, and we're like, oh yeah, no, we'll put that in. Like this game is built off of what I've been waiting to see in a new major title in a long time. Like I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre. And in particular from Tactics Ogre, I love that it actually has branching plot that feels meaningful. It's only like two big choices, but it branches hard. Yeah. And that's what this game is really kind of leaning into. So that announcement alone, I mean, that's already my most hyped game for 2022. Like, I don't think anything's going to knock that off for me because it just speaks to me. And I know that doesn't speak to everyone else, which is why, I'm still hyperventilating from that reveal. And everyone else is just going like, where the hell's Zelda? Like I'm losing my mind over here. And everyone's like, okay, sure. It's like Octopath Traveler, I guess. I don't know. Like, whatever. The Zelda thing is definitely the gut punch for most people, though, because it's not just a matter of what we got. It's what people were hoping we would get. Yeah. And the fact that, again, no Breath of the Wild 2 news, which didn't surprise me. I was actually really happy they came out ahead and said, like, hey, we know you're looking for that, but we're just not ready to talk about that right now. Like, I respect they made that move. But then to follow that up with Skyward Sword, which, look, I've been having Twitter wars with people lately over this. The pricing on that is such a mess, and people think I'm defending Nintendo, which I'm not. I think people are confusing me saying Nintendo is Nintendo as some kind of like, oh, it's okay because it's Nintendo. No, it's resignation. It's me just being like, yeah, I'm not surprised. Like Nintendo would absolutely re-release Skyward Sword and charge you $60 for it. Like I'm not like that's just what they would do. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I think if you feel strongly about it, don't buy it. That's the easiest, like show them with your wallet. But yeah, it's just rough, and especially because this is a little bit the community's fault to an extent, and Nintendo's fault too. After the reveal of the Mario All-Stars collection, it just made so much sense to everyone in all their minds that like, oh, we should get a Zelda collection. Like we should absolutely get, it'll be Wind Waker, it'll be Twilight Princess, it'll be Skyward Sword. It's going to be awesome. Keep in mind, this is after we already had leaked info about Skyward Sword having a standalone release. That was leaked like 5 months ago. And everyone, the moment we started talking about 35th anniversary, everyone forgot that. And instead focused on just being like, oh no, collection. Like that makes sense. $60, give me three of the later 3D games. It's going to be awesome. And we didn't get that. But not only do we not get that, we got the one that arguably everyone hates the most, and they're still charging you $60. And look, I'm an optimist in general. I try to always look on the bright side of things. And so one of my big takeaways from this whole thing has been very much like, look, I'm not trying to argue here that Skyward Sword is like the diamond in the rough. I'm not going to say that this is like actually the best Zelda that y'all are sleeping on. I'm not going to say that. But I do think it sometimes gets a little extra hate than it really deserves. And with the right tweaks, the right fixes, it could shine a little more. It's not going to replace Ocarina of Time for anyone. It's not going to replace Link to the Past for anyone. Not even close. But there is like a solid game underneath there that if Fee would just not talk for 10 minutes and you give me non-motion controls, which we have confirmed, fix a couple other little things, I think there's a good game buried under there, Like that's my hope for it, at least, is that, and the messed up part about all this is that a collection of all three actually would have been better for it, because more people would buy it for the others and be like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'm really curious to see how this one sells. I mean, it's Zelda. It's going to sell well, but I'm very curious, especially if the rumors of a Wind Waker and Twilight Princess standalone release into being true, because that immediately became a rumor right after.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see what those sales numbers are between those three titles. They're all going to do well. I don't think any of them is going to be a flop, but really curious to see, like, if you made a chart, how tall is Wind Waker going to be over here, and then Twilight Princess kind of in the middle, and then just Skyward Sword, give it a shot. You should, maybe. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, I would say like Skyward Sword is arguably more divisive in the Zelda fandom than I would say even Zelda 2 is. Like, those are the two most polarizing ones, but like I think because of accessibility, just Skyward Sword is just the most. I remember when it came out, you saw the great numbers for the reviews from all the outlets, but then you go to game FAQs or you go to any message forum, like people were just like angry about it. And I remember when I got it, I was like, okay, I see it. It's good, but like that was always like anytime I would say something, oh yeah, it's great, but I like this, but
Absolutely. Like that's that game's problem. And that's the thing too. That's the weight that comes with having like a really successful, and especially in Zelda's case, like iconic franchise, is that if you make a 7 out of 10 game, people are going to hate it because it's just not living up to what has now been established as what they think is the level this game needs to be at. It's one of those things, like if Skyward Sword was reskinned entirely as something else and released under a totally different name, probably would have gotten better reviews and reception in general, right? People probably would have been like, oh, like, yeah, this tutorial character is kind of annoying and the motion controls are a little weird, but yeah, it's really neat how it has you like slice direction is important and there's like this stuff. And like what really breaks my heart a little bit of that game is that like visually and conceptually, there is some really cool stuff in that game, right? I mean, you have a flying mount, there's floating islands, you're diving down to the earth below where you have to do other stuff. And it also ends up being this like kind of origin story for the overarching universe. Like that's a lot of really cool stuff that when you read it in a summary sounds great. And then you play it and it's fine. It's rough. It's rough.
I hope that they add additional like quality of life to the game. Like, Fi is god awfully annoying. Yeah. And just the amount, I feel like that game alone probably has more backtracking than almost any other Zelda I've played. Because I remember when I went through it, I was like, it's like you go down, you go down to the earth, you do things here, you go to this dungeon, and you come back, and I felt like I went to the first area way more like than any other Zelda that I've done. Like,
and not and not in a convenient way is what hurts it too, right? Like it's not like you just play a song and you teleport there and there you go. Like you got to put in work to go back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, go. I had a thought. I lost it. Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, like, I hope they do kind of like what they did with the Wind Waker HD, where they kind of did the quality of life on the sailing a bit, where it's not as monotonous as it was in the original GameCube release. I'm hoping they do make some changes there because, like that. There were points, especially, and I'm wondering if you felt the same way, like with Skyward Sword. I felt like the game at points was just a drag, like it just dragged on too long.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right. Like again, like I'm talking about like hoping that this gives it the shine it needs because there's something good underneath there. But I absolutely had problems with like I pushed through it and I still overall I think net enjoyed it, but it definitely was like compared to other experiences with Zelda where I'm probably like just playing all night and pushing through and having fun. This one's where it's like maybe I'll stop playing for a couple days and come back. It definitely had that feeling a lot more. And that's also one of the really kind of contentious things about this re-release right now is that a lot of people are under the assumption, and I'm not even saying this is a wrong assumption, but a lot of people are in the assumption that everything that was talked about at that direct is all there is to talk about with it. They added non-motion controls. It's HD in the sense that it's going to be 1080, but it looks like it really wasn't like a hard job done on it. Like you look at the comparison between what we saw yesterday and what was the original game release, outside of just being lower res, compared to what happened with Wind Waker from the GameCube to Wii U. Like it feels a little lower right now. And that might not be true. There might be a follow-up, announcement later on where there's some extra stuff announced. There can be more changes to the game, but right now, especially with how things were worded yesterday, it kind of feels like all we're getting is those control changes, and that's where it's worse. And then again, going back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like, I think with the right fixes, the game could be great. It might not be getting those fixes. It probably isn't, but I hope for its sake it is, because it needs them. Yeah.
Definitely. And dude, so I know you said earlier, like you're a JRPG fan, so am I. Isn't it interesting to see now how Square Enix is actually pushing their other franchises beyond just Final Fantasy? I remember when they merged with Enix, like back in the day, and it was just Final Fantasy. Like Legend, the Mana series, push it away side. The Saga series, push it away. Like everything else was just pushed to the side just for Final Fantasy. And it's like now it's like we got Final Fantasy, we got Dragon Quest for you, we brought back Saga, here's the Mana series, which I honestly like. And I was talking to one of my friends that's in Square Enix, and he was saying like, we didn't think that Trials of Mana would do as well as it did. Like he's like, that's such a surprise how well that did coming off of Secret of Mana. I'm like, well, you guys did a lot more for Trials of Mana than you did for Secret of Mana, so.
Yeah, well, and look, coming from a fan perspective of that, and this is partially obviously wishful thinking too a little bit, didn't surprise me at all, because I can tell you for myself personally, and a lot of people I knew growing up, the only way to access that game was through emulation. That game had such a strong, dedicated fan base in the West whose only experience with it was thanks to emulation and fan translations. And that was even kind of a running joke when we were still waiting for Square to maybe do something with it, where it's like the people who did that fan patch way back in the day were like, we already translated it, you can take it. Like, that's a thing that happened. Yeah. They were like, you can use our translation, like just release it in the West. And so when that collection happened, that was the biggest thing for me that E3. Like, I lost my mind to that collection. And then when they confirmed that it was getting like a full-blown remake like Secret of Mana, I'll admit, I was actually a little less hyped for it initially, especially because the Secret of Mana remake was a little weird too. It loses a little bit of the charm, I think. But there was definitely this audience out there that was starved for that game, that like knew of it, heard of it, had friends that played it, and would always talk it up as like the best Mana game, because it is the best Mana game. Yeah. And it's like, here it finally is. Like playable. Like that was so huge to me that we got that localized. And I got to say, Square's overall move, I'm loving it so much. This is like a weird second golden era for me in some ways. And look, is some of it just porting a game and upraising it? Absolutely. But a lot of these games have not been easily accessible for a lot of people, especially on modern platforms. I mean, really the only way for a lot of them was thankfully because of how much Sony ended up supporting digital releases of PS1 games for the that's one of the reasons why I still use my Vita on occasion, is it's like the best way for me to play some PS1 stuff on the go. But like you were saying, Legend of Mana is getting a remake. Saga Frontier out of nowhere is not only getting re-released and upscaled, but is coming with finished content that never came out before. Before that, we saw a lot of other Saga games getting localized that weren't localized previously. Romancing Saga 2, I think it was, right? We never got that before, and that got localized. It's even if we don't get anything new from these properties, I love the fan love that's coming from at least putting that out there and giving us a way to play it, maybe just a little bit better than the way it was before, and give new people a way to access it that never got the option. And that's what's great about the Switch too, is that like the Switch has reopened to such a large audience of people who didn't really keep up with other gaming systems, and maybe they didn't grow up with a PS1, maybe they don't have a Vita or a PS3 to play these games digitally. And so putting those out there is music to my ears. I mean, at this point, the only thing I could really ask for is if we actually got a true Tactics Ogre follow-up, but that's not going to happen. I'll take Triangle. That's enough.
You think about like all the strides that the Switch has made and just gaming in general now, and you look at like from the era we came up in, like I was talking to my nephew the other day, and he was talking about, man, I wish there was more games coming out. Like I wish we had this, and that. And I'm like, dude, sit down. Let me get my coffee. Let me talk to you about what it was like being a gamer in the 90s and the early 2000s, when all we had was to know something was coming out, a publication had to talk about it, or we had to see it in the Sunday newspaper. Like, okay, this is at this store, this is at Target, this is at Walmart, this is at Funko, Babbage's, whatever. It was rough.
Well, not only that, but like, look, to actually find out about a game on launch day that wasn't like whatever the next Zelda or whatever, you knew Ocarina of Time was coming out. Like people were paying attention to that because Link to the Past was such a big deal. But most other games, I mean, really, a lot of it was finding stuff out after the fact because it had a cool cover at Blockbuster and you rented it and went, I need to actually own this. Yeah. And so it was a lot weirder. And the thing is, too, production of games was overall a lot slower as well. I mean, there was a lot of times where you might discover a game at a Blockbuster that you find out, oh, this is great. I want to buy it. No one's got it in stock. Maybe someone's reselling it and it's not for cheap, especially nowadays if you're hunting down the Xbox. Nowadays it's like, oh, they got 8,000 copies of this game at GameStop and they only sold like 20 on launch day. Cool. They got plenty extra. Or even then, like, digital release is an option. So if you're really backed into a corner and you want to play it, it's still there that way in infinite supply, unless they decide to pull it from the store later, I guess. Thanks for Mario All-Stars collection. Yeah, it was different. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about like your journey with gaming. Like what was that? This is technically going to be two questions, but I'm going to try and wrap them into one. But what was your journey like in the sense of like, what was that game that solidified for you that you're a gamer? And what was like growing up gaming, for you?
I've been hanging out a lot lately on, do you know what Clubhouse is?
Yep, I'm on it. I'm on it.
Oh, well, I will give you a follow after this. I've been on Clubhouse lately, and I've been in a couple of different like retro rooms and kind of just socialized about gaming rooms. And this is a question that's actually come up a lot lately. And I find that I feel like my answer is actually a little different than a lot of people. And I don't know if it's just because of circumstance and timing or whatever. I can't tell you what game was like a defining moment for me, because as far back as I remember, I've been playing games. Like I can't, and part of this is because I'm a little brother. My brother is 6 years older than me, and so when I was still, just like a baby, there was already, NESs being in the household. There was a Game Boy lying around somewhere. Like that stuff was just present as soon as I was starting to exist. And so, as far back as I can recall, seeing my brother play Legend of Zelda on the NES and me wanting to try and play and probably being very terrible at it. I don't remember how I did. I just know I had a controller at some point. Super Mario Brothers 3, like there are certain games that absolutely stand out more so in my memory. I remember playing a lot of the first Mega Man on Game Boy. I did that a lot. That was like my go-to original fat Game Boy game until Pokemon happened later in my life. I remember Legend of Zelda. I remember Super Mario Brothers 3. Once we got the Super NES, I remember, Super Mario World and Link to the Past. And I started getting, near the end of that system's life cycle is when I started really being older and having more of my own agency of like, oh, I want that game. Like, let's get that. I will say one that was formative in a way, and to be honest with you, I'm not entirely even sure if this is completely true because I don't have the greatest recollection of my childhood. Super Mario RPG, because even though I'm a huge RPG head, like I was saying earlier, I didn't actually own any of the big RPGs on SNES back in the day. Never had a Final Fantasy growing up on the SNES. I never had Chrono Trigger, which is my favorite game of all time now, but I didn't grow up with it. Super Mario RPG was really the only RPG I had experience with early on. It was because a friend had it and I played at his place, and then he let me borrow it, because that was the other way you got games back then, was very good friends let you borrow stuff, and then sometimes you'd move away and now it's yours, or vice versa. But that like exposed me to the RPG genre for the first time, and it's a great introduction to it too, because it's such a user-friendly one, and that's what I think kind of woke me up to that genre. And later on, I also didn't have a PS1 growing up. I was N64 only, and my PS2 ended up serving as my way of going back in time to PS1 games. I probably played more PS1 stuff my PS2, if I'm being honest. And that's really where I full dove into like playing a lot of these classics and stuff that I always heard about but didn't get the chance to play firsthand. And Mario RPG is probably the game that really set me on that path. Because before then, I probably would have said my favorite game is like Mega Man X, which is still high up there for me. But that's the game that really converted me into the RPG fan base and like never left.
Dude, I definitely feel it. Like that, there's a lot of similarities between you and I, like with a gaming taste and similarities in growing up with gaming. Especially for me, like, you know, I'm the young, like my oldest brothers, well, older brother, because I'm the youngest out of six kids. So my older brother, Devin, he's 6-7 years older than me. So I was the same way. Grew up. There's always a, you know, NES, or we had we had a Sega Master System that was just that never got played. But yeah, we mainly were in like a Nintendo family, so we grew up with that. Like I was growing up playing, you know, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Shatterhand, Contra. Like I was just the kid when I would go to like kindergarten. I was talking about this and that, like, oh yeah, I played this, I played that, and the other kids are like, what's that? What? Like what? My older brothers don't let me play their stuff. I'm like, mine doesn't either. I just sneak and play it. So that's how that works. Oh god, like I remember when Street Fighter 2 came out. Oh my god, especially when it came out to like console, like the Super Nintendo, and we would literally have everybody in the neighborhood over, and it was just crazy because like I'm originally from Western Samoa, so like we were the only kids in the entirety of Samoa that had it, and it was just insane. So everybody would come from the other island, like not the other side of the island.
That's an important trip.
Island. Yeah. I mean, there's American Samoa, but people would come from the other side of the island to come to like our village just to play, and it was just, man, it was crazy. And then when we moved to the United States, because my dad was my dad was a Marine, so when we moved there, I had to learn English because, you know, English is not my native language. It's actually my third language, and I had to. You know, I was struggling with reading English. I was struggling speaking it. And I remember my mom ended up she got me Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, and I believe Final Fantasy 3. And those games literally, because I was so ensnared and I wanted to know what was going on, it helped me with, you know, like learning English, you know, cadence and everything. And it's just, I've just been stuck with like RPG since, because that's just that love for it. Like, you know, I've got that emotional connection to it. So it's seeing how they've gone from little pixels on the screen to like fully realized, you know, 3D models that there are now with like Final Fantasy 7 remake, or, you know, with, you know, the Trials of Mana remake. It's amazing to see the progression of not only gaming, but the RPG genre as a whole. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's definitely some big touchstones with like where that happens, right? Because I feel like people who are fans of RPG, like you can kind of note when certain games came out and that genre grew and changed its directions. And obviously the one that deserves the most mention is FF7, regardless of what your personal favorite Final Fantasy is, because it's not my personal favorite. No one can deny the like cultural significance of that game coming out, because that is what like RPGs already had big stories before then. You know, Final Fantasy 4 and 6 are still big games. Chrono Trigger is amazing, but there's a level of cinematic flair that came with 7, you know, introducing the 3D look and angles. I mean, that opening shot when you look up at the Mako reactor and you see this building, like that was huge back then, you know, and that kind of almost permanently, there's a part of me that's a little salty actually, and will sometimes argue that this is like actually kind of hurt RPGs a little bit, because then people got obsessed more with like having a good look than having like necessarily the rest of it built out. But at the same time, like that was huge, you know, and that really kind of brought it to a whole new audience. Yeah. You know?
It also that made me think of like back then, like because of Final Fantasy VII, because that was the first RPG that really hit the mainstream, here in the West, that, every RPG that came out was constantly compared to Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII. Like, it got to a point where if it had the Final Fantasy name in it, people assumed it was already the perfect game. And then you would see other games that would come out, other RPGs that would say, oh, I'm the Final Fantasy VII killer or the Final Fantasy killer. And it's like, no, just focus on doing your own thing. Because there were definitely games I felt that were, compared to the Final Fantasies that came out at the time, like Final Fantasy VIII or Final Fantasy IX, I felt were better games overall. Like Skies of Arcadia, I think is absolutely fantastic. Grandia 2, Grandia 1, absolutely fantastic. But because they didn't have that at the time, like they're getting their respect now, but at the time, because it didn't have that Final Fantasy moniker, it's like, no, it's not as good.
Well, not to mention, especially in the West, Final Fantasy is such like a simple title to go with, especially back then, right? Like you try to tell your friend, like, oh yeah, but have you tried Suikoden 2? What did you just say to me? And Suikoden 2 is an amazing game. I mean, arguably the best JRPG on the PS1. Mm-hmm. And back then, I mean, no one would know what you're talking about. I remember during the PS2 era, I was looking to hunt down a copy of Shin Megami Tensei 3. And like I said that to a person at a store and they were like, What? Shima what? Like shoe? What? Like what is this you're asking? Like, are we speaking the same language right now? Like what? Also, really weird side story, just because something you said made me think of this.
Go for it.
So about RPGs in the West before Final Fantasy and people not really playing them yet. Mm-hmm. I've got this guy who we're not like super close friends, but we're acquaintances, and I've been to his place a few times. And he's this collector who has an amazing collection of, games, yes, which is always the first thing people think of, like, oh, like how complete is the shelf? Which he has multiple complete catalogs of some systems. Mm-hmm. But what really he leans into is a lot of very interesting pieces of history. And he has all kinds of stuff that I cannot tell you how he got it. Old test machines, banners from different events, things that were like kiosks from E3s, however many years ago. Wow. And one of the things he showed me, and he actually gave me one, it's at the office, I don't have it here to show, but it's this little button. And it's a button that shows someone working at their desk, burnt to a crisp, saying, I survived Dragon Quest. And the history of this button is when Square and Nintendo wanted to try and bring the RPG genre over to the West, because Dragon Quest was huge in Japan, massive success. I guess there was a point where Nintendo Power just straight up like came with the game. There was some kind of like mass event where they just sent out Dragon Quest to like everyone. And it was just like, here you go. And of course, back then, there weren't really strategy guides, at least none that were easily accessible. There was not, GameFAQs or some kind of internet to like go turn to. Like the Nintendo Power line was what you had to work with, the helpline. And so the day that happened and those got shipped out, their lines absolutely exploded because people were just calling in like, what am I supposed to do in this game? Like, what is even happening here? Like, I've got a sword and like there's like a command to talk to someone. I don't even know what's going on, because it was so different from everything else they had played. And that genre didn't really catch on over here yet. So it was this massively different experience. And all these people that just basically got a full game, like a free demo, didn't know what to do with it. And so those buttons were made by the teams after that all happened, who were just like, we made it. Like, we got through this week of people just calling, asking about Dragon Quest and how to even like, not even like difficult questions, like how to get past this boss, just like, what am I doing? Like that's how far that genre has come now with how that all went down. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy when you think like at how culturally significant like Dragon Quest is to Japan. Like even still, it's so monumentally like it's the game for RPGs there. And then you look at how in the West we've had so many sporadic releases. I know in the last 20 years we've gotten way more Dragon Quest games than we ever have. It's like 35-40 year history, but like none of them except for I want to say Dragon Quest 11 and maybe Dragon Quest 8 when that came out, I think 2003, 2004, really hit their stride here in the West. But even then, they've never reached the heights of Final Fantasy. And I feel like Square wants that. That's, you know, that you look at, like, we've got the Dragon Quest Die anime. They've had the Dragon Quest movie on Netflix. Like, they're really pushing that here in the West. I don't know if he'll catch on though.
It's, you know what it is too. The thing that's rough about Dragon Quest, at least for the West, is that series, it's such a great, comfortable RPG. But what's comfortable about it is that it kind of, more than any other major series that has been around this long, Dragon Quest still feels like the earlier Dragon Quest, but just evolved a certain way. You look at Final Fantasy 15, you even look at Final Fantasy like 12, and you compare that to Final Fantasy's roots. Very different. There's certain touchstones and iconography that's similar, but it doesn't really trace back to that feeling. You play the newest Dragon Quest, it feels like you're playing Dragon Quest 3 or 4 or whatever. Like, there's a very strong, like, encoded DNA to that series that, because the West never really got into it as much. And I'll be honest, I was a latecomer to Dragon Quest. That was another series I didn't really grow up with. And so I ended up taking the plunge into it, I want to say 4 years ago. And I just started consuming them back to back. I played 8. I loved it. From there, I went to play a lot of the 3DS re-releases, you know, picked up 11 right when it came out. I did try 9 way back when that was released, because I was like, oh, job class system, that sounds interesting. But it really wasn't until later that I went all in. Also, real quick, just because I feel like a jerk for talking about him, not shouting him out real quick. The friend I was mentioning earlier, he goes by Art of Nintendo on Twitter. Check him out. He shares a lot of the cool historical pieces he has found. A great follow if you're into any kind of history stuff. The dude has encyclopedic knowledge and insane connections as far as just the retro community and finding old stuff. Great guy. Give him a look.
Awesome. And so one of the other things I want to dive into, you know, being respectful of your time. I know we're coming up on an hour at this point.
No worries. No worries.
So I want to talk about as far as like content creating as a career, transitioning away from, you know, you were doing GameStop before, like retail and whatnot, to doing this. Have you ever had a point where you're not feeling like stressed out, or like, hey, I need to get this video out, or just, you know, feeling like you're losing yourself and just making your content? Because it's a very vastly different career feel. And one of the things, like, I really try to relay that to the audience is content creating is not like anything else that you've ever probably done. So the first thing about content creator, like about being a content creator in general and stuff, I really wish there was a better phrase for that, but it's just the best catch-all. No two people's experiences are the same. Like, we all have our different struggles. It depends a lot on, you know, what kind of content you're creating. What's your workflow? What's your support circle? Like, what kind of community have you found yourself being a part in? And just how do you as a person tick? You know, you can talk to so many content creators about their experiences, and I don't think anyone's going to give you the same story. You know, I honestly, for me, I was very fortunate. You know, like I said earlier, I feel like my origin story, or whatever you want to call it, how I got into YouTube is not that. There are so many better inspiring stories, I feel, because for me, really, like, I'm not going to say there wasn't hard work and that kind of thing. Obviously, you know, pour yourself into it. But, you know, I really was fortunate in the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, I kind of came up working alongside with John on TLD. TLD ended up taking off and doing great. And so that put me in a position where I could, you know, not without risk, but a certain degree of safety, be like, all right, I'm quitting my job and going all in on this while my channel still really isn't that profitable yet, but help get it to that point, you know? And so I was very fortunate to have that opportunity. But in terms of like not feeling overwhelmed, I guess, like it's always going to be there. You know, you'll have your good days, you'll have your bad days. And like I said at the outset of this podcast, like I'm in one of the best places I've been mentally in a while, because I really feel like I'm kind of hitting a stride after rough times, and 2020 being what it was. And it's so many different things, right? It's the pressure of getting a video out. It's the pressure of making something you think people will like, or, you know, even more messed up, honestly, is not
necessarily making something you think people will like, but making something you think people will like and actually watch in droves.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than pouring your heart and soul into something, and it's like this is the one where like I feel it, like I'm really showing like me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And this video got like 1/10 the views of everything else I put out. Okay, on to the next controllers you should buy for Switch video, guys, which I still have fun with those too. But it's this hard road you have to walk sometimes. And there's a lot of creators I know where, there's that constant struggle of making what you want to make versus what you got popular for, or what works better, or what, when I got into YouTube and when I was doing videos back on TLD, the focus was game reviews, because that's what I really care about. I was not into hardware before. I mean, lightly in the sense of, I want to have the newest system or whatever, but you could ask me my thought years ago, before I really got more full-time into YouTube, you could ask me my thoughts on the performance power difference between the Xbox, the PS2, and GameCube, and what determined which one was the successful one. And I'd be like, I don't know. I like playing this on this one. It was really on my radar, but I fell into that because, as I made more videos and I made more stuff, it's like, oh, like talking about this system coming out hitting way better than me talking about my thoughts on this latest game release. And so you find yourself kind of falling in these niches, and I'm finding myself in a position right now where I'm really finding a better balance, I think, between what works, but also what feels more creatively fulfilling to me. And that's an important thing, because the problem of falling into the trap of doing what works and focusing on that is that it's not fun anymore. It's not like the whole, not that work shouldn't be fun. Like sometimes work is work, and that's just how it's got to be. But part of the point of getting into content creation is that idea and belief that like, I want to do this more than work a 9 to 5. I want to do this more than have like a regular, just like paying job. Like this is a thing that you want to do it because it actually means something to you to an extent as well. Right. And so it's very easy to lose sight a little bit of holding on to that once you start getting that success. And then it's like, oh, wait, now I need to lean into this other stuff. That's not really why I wanted to do this in the first place. Every creator deals with that. I have met, there are obviously always going to be the few exceptions. There's going to be those people who were the overnight successes. They made videos and they have the right amount of charisma and the right amount of timing and the right formula that it worked out. And that's amazing for those people. That is not the average experience. And even those people run into those problems, right? Because now they're dealing with meteoric rise and success, but maybe it's not for the reasons they wanted it to happen. Maybe something took off about their work that they're not necessarily happy about, or they're looking to branch off in some other direction, and maybe you just get tired of the thing you got popular for, like it happens. And so I feel like that's the constant tug of war in every creator, is just like, what do I got to do that's going to make me happy doing this? And what do I got to do to make sure I can pay rent this month? Like that's because that's the reality of it. It's not like you can just do what you want because you can. Like, once you go all in, once you go full time, I mean, there's realities you got to work with.
Yeah.
Great.
It's definitely a like I said, I've been full time for a year and a half, and it's there are days when I miss my IT check. I'm over here like, I could have just did this for 2 weeks and I would have got this check guaranteed. And I'm over here like, I need to bust my ass and get this video out, or I need to do this PR release, or I need to do this, or I've got this sponsorship opportunity. I mean, I feel like doing it right now, but I need to go ahead and just go and do it. It's oh God. Yeah. And a lot of people don't get it. And it's crazy. I'm finding myself in a sphere where I'm making a lot of friends that are content. Well, I have over the years, but it seems like now more so than ever, I'm making more friends with people that are content creators, because I'm finding myself not having a lot in common with a lot of people that aren't doing content creating. It's like, I can't talk to like my sisters out here. I'll talk to her about, okay, I'm doing this, and this, and I feel stressed out because I need to get this video out, or this company sent me this, or I got a sponsorship opportunity, or it's paid partnership. And she's like, I don't understand what you do. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know. And I mean, yeah, I get that 1,000%. I mean, that's why whenever I talk to extended family, like, I mean, my own close-knit family knows what I do, and they still don't fully understand it, but they support it and all that kind of stuff. But every time I'm talking to like extended family or friends of family, or I'm meeting someone new that doesn't have to do with what I do for work, I'm just like, oh, I do video production. Like, hey, we shoot videos. Yeah. Like that's what we do. Like, I don't even want to try and like go through that full conversation, because it's always immediately followed up with the like, how do you make money doing that? It's like a lot of hard work, like a lot of investment. Because there's this weird mixture too, where I think people always picture the people that have the overnight success, and they're just like, oh yeah, so you just made like a funny thing, and now you got like, you know, they hear about how much money whatever Jake Paul makes or something, and they're like, oh, so you're making like millions of dollars just like doing stuff on the internet? Like, no, I wish I was doing that. No, I'm researching. I'm hand testing all these controllers to give an honest opinion on what I like more. I'm researching history on stuff for a video that's maybe a little more of a puff piece that I want to do well, but maybe people might not actually watch. I'm trying to find ways to be more engaging. I need to make sure I'm putting videos up. I'm on a timetable. If I've got any kind of sponsored stuff I got to work on, like it's a lot of work. And you talk about missing that IT check, right? There is definitely an appeal to that idea of sometimes being like, look, working, you know, retail, for instance, like I had from GameStop, like I'm not a fan of it, but there is a certain aspect of missing, like you go to your job, you go home and you're done. Your time is your time from there on out, you know, outside of obviously any other personal commitments. And that's not how it works with content creation. You're always on the clock. There's no days off. There's no time off. You know, like if every moment you're not at least trying to put some effort in or think about it, that's you're falling behind schedule.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just how it ends up being.
It's truly, and it's crazy because like, you know, my wife is also a full-time content creator too. And more so in her sense, it came about just because the job that she was working, she's with the company for 12, 13 years that last year decided to close all their stores here in Hawaii. And they're like, yep, we're done. So it just laid off her and everybody else. So she's like, well, fuck, what do I do? And I'm like, well, you know, you do this as a hobby. Let's just decide to go all in. Like she does arts and crafts. She does gaming. She's into gaming, RPGs and stuff like that. Anime and manga. I'm like, now is the time to just throw everything at the wall. Like, just.
No, I mean, truth be told, that's the exact situation my fiance's in. You know, she had stable work off and on. She actually got what really ended up being kind of a dream job for her last year before COVID, like right before, like she started her new job in like January, and it was like, oh, like, you know, I'm not getting paid as much total, but she was getting paid more for less hours. She had a lot more time to herself to work on side crafts and things she was interested in. And so it was like the dream situation. Then COVID hit. And she's a graphic designer, and they were like, hey, like, you know, we'd love to keep you if we can, but we're not doing events. We don't need posters made right now. You know, we don't need to show stuff off. And so, you know, she kept looking for work after, but it kind of became one of like, you've always wanted to try and do streaming. You've always wanted to start selling your own artwork directly. Just do it. You know, like, I mean, money's a little tighter, but I'm still doing well enough that we can eat and we have a place to sleep. Just go all in, you know? And so she's been really focusing on Twitch streaming. She's been starting to make her own stickers and stuff and sell on Etsy. And I plug her whenever I can on Twitter to be like, oh, check out like this new art from, you know, like, check it out. I'm hanging out on her stream today. If you just want to like chill with us, like, you know, just trying to like help that along. Cause and that's the move a lot of people made, right? I mean, I'm sure there's some statistic on there of how many more Twitch streamers there are in the last year and how that growth is just exponential, I'm sure. Because if you lost your job and there was nothing else to turn to, you know, self-start.
Dude, like, and it's just crazy when you know, 2020, man, freaking 2020, like, just that was just, oh god, that year. Yeah, but like going through that, you know, and then we found out, I think I told you before, like we're expecting our first kid. So it's like, there's that pressure too. And I know for me, next month, So next month's huge in the sense of, or the time of this recording, March 2021 is huge because not only is that the month that my daughter is born, but it's also when I make 5 years of remission from cancer. So
shit.
Dude, I'm like, okay, huge thing. Like, I'm trying not to stress out. Content creating has been stressful for me lately because I've not only have I gotten more opportunities to work with bigger companies and partner up with different companies, but it's like there's a point when I guess like there was slow points. Like, I don't know, okay, maybe I'll get a game, maybe I'll get a product, maybe I'll get something like this. And then, once the podcast kicked off more, once I was working with more companies, now it's like every week I've got 6 or 7 packages coming in. Like, okay, you need to work on this. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take time. Oh, shit. Okay. No, I got to work on this headset. I need to work on this controller. I need to work on whatever this game comes. This game's not coming out for this. And I got this pre-release product. Now I've got all this. And I'm like, and I need to make time for myself and for my wife and just not stress out. And people don't get it. Like, I know I was talking to my friends ACG and Luis Alamia about
Hey, Luis. I know Luis.
Yeah.
He and I go way back, actually.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I told you, like I said, I started on TLD.
Yeah.
Luis, before he was into gaming, was a tech guy. Like, that was what he was first trying to do way back when. And so, in the early days of YouTube, I mean, he was also a kid back then. But, we'd all just kind of we'd all just kind of lightly chat back then. And then, years later, he starts leaning into games. I'm leaning into games. We meet up at E3. We hang out. Like, I wouldn't say that we're like closest friends, being like that. But like, he's one of those dudes where just as long as I've been kind of working in the space, I've known him,
Yeah.
He's one of the oldest acquaintances I have in this field. And that dude works his ass off. Like that guy, I so want to see his stuff grow more because I feel like he puts in more work than a lot of other creators I know. And it just doesn't sometimes catch, like it's like that guy puts in hours.
Yeah, it's like every time I hit him up or he hits me up, I'm like, dude, what are you up to? And he's like, oh, I'm working on this, I'm working on that. I'm like, I know that grind. And it's different when you don't have a team too. Like, I think that's one of the other things I've run into with like some people in my own community and other people that, they're like, oh, you do YouTube or you do this, you do that. Like, how come your videos aren't like this? How come you don't have all the multi-angles or all this? I'm like, that person has a team.
Yeah.
Me, I don't have money for that team.
No, it makes a world of difference. And even that's going back to what I was saying about, being fortunate in my position. We didn't have a big team right away, but, it was me, it was John, it was my brother. And so even from the start, when we were just making stuff, there was still at least a degree of being able to separate responsibilities a little bit. And then once we did start having a team, which right now we're a modest size, it's basically not including John, myself, and Josh. We have 2 other people. But I mean, that makes a world of difference, and it allows you not only, to be able to break that work down and share it more, but it also, like you're saying, it affords you things that not everyone has the ability to do all the time. Like sometimes you need a camera guy. Like you can't. Yeah. You can't hold up and like if you want to have the cool like hand shaky cam approach, you're not going to do that like at the same time as trying to be perfectly full body on camera. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
There's just options that open up with it that definitely make a world of difference.
Yeah, and it's one of the things too. Like, I was talking to my wife about that. How like with content creators out here in Hawaii, because it's and I get a lot of flack from people here about that because I will say that there are not that many of us. Like there are a lot of us out here that are content creators, but there's not a lot, if any, really, with the exception of my wife, myself, and maybe one other person. Shout out to Moke Boy, who's really he's the first person in Hawaii that ever made partner with HyperX. There's, aside from the 3 of us, there's really no one else out here that's working with corporations. Like it's got our own like business email that are on conference calls that are getting brand, deals, opportunities, partnerships. And it's like you have the other ones that have this mentality of, oh, follow for follow. give me a shout out, do all the work for me, but let me take the credit for, and it's, hopefully I'm not babbling, but it's funny to me because, my wife and I, we talk about this all the time, how it's like, it's one thing when I guess you're starting off, or if you've been doing it for a while and you never really caught that traction of having the opportunity to work on a bigger level. But like the mentality is so different when you're working with corporations and other bigger creators, or, you've got something going versus, oh, let's do follow for follow,
Yeah.
it's I'm trying not to trigger folks. I know I'm going to trigger folks, especially out here, but it's like, I've had so many instances. So here's one, right? So there's a company out here. I'm not going to say her name because I'm not going to give them clout, but there's a company out here where, they do like computer stuff, and they wanted basically me to interview them on my podcast. Because they say, oh, I saw you interview Richard Epcar, you had Ruben Langdon, you had this person, you had that person, have me on your show, support local, because there's that pressure out here of support local, but
the community.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll have you on. So I had him on. He's like, I want to support your work. I was like, okay, cool. So then he went on to become a patron for me, just like a lot of people did out here. And becoming a patron to them was, now I control your content. I will tell you, you're going to put this out, you're going to put that out, you're going to promote me, I'm going to give you this, and I'm like, you're a $5 patron.
Yeah.
I have sponsorship deals that pay me $500,000. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like,
and it's weird too, right? Because it's rough, because I do think there are merits to the idea of like, helping to represent the community, because that's something that happens a lot in here SoCal with the retro games community. It's a tight knit community, and like there's all the people that own local stores know each other. Some of them got their rivalries, and like, I totally get that situation, because sometimes it'll be like, not that you want something for nothing, but sometimes people like, they'll try to hook you up, but then there's those strings attached they don't mention first right away. And it's like, if you're trying to be nice, like if you're trying to help someone out, like help someone out, And if you want to do like a deal, cool, do a deal. But like, let's be clear what we're doing for this, because there's always going to be those people that, like you're saying, that it turns into some kind of obligation when that wasn't what we talked about at the start. It's the classic, having family sometimes that aren't the family you want to necessarily always help, because that's where it comes from. It's rough, but I totally get that. I've been in those situations as well, and it's uncomfortable because, and especially in some of those cases, if it's someone who you know personally, or it's someone who you considered a friend or an acquaintance, it really hurts to be put in that situation. Because now you feel like you're failing them or something, or that you're hurting them, and it's like, wait, no, I didn't put us in the situation though. Like, I didn't, hold on, wait, but it's hard to have that step back when you're in the middle of it, because you don't want to be a jerk, I feel like, especially in this field, a lot of people are very cynical. There's a lot of people don't trust a lot of creators out there. And some of that is absolutely earned. There have been a lot of major stories of people who have done very wrong by their community and deserve to be called out for it. But it kind of leads to this cascading effect where everyone always assumes that every creator has some dirt under the rug, or, is doing stuff, and like how angry they'll get about certain ad spots or something too. And it's like, man, I'm just trying to pay rent. I'm trying to make sure I can eat, everyone thinks that you're a secret millionaire or something and you're not sharing. And it's like, no, I'm working hard over here trying to make ends meet. And it's rough sometimes, and not to be like, oh, it was me, like whatever, like at the end of the day, again, what struggles are aside, I'm much happier doing this than a lot of other stuff. Definitely better than my retail years. But yeah, it's a weird line to walk. And that's even something that I've been really trying to actively do this year is, like I was saying at the start of the podcast, I forget if we were recording yet when I was talking about this actually.
I don't think we were. No, we weren't.
So I've really been making a more conscious effort this year. I don't want to call it like a New Year's resolution because I'm not a fan of like trying to put labels like that. But something I've been really trying to do this year is be a more active member of the community, which is partly why this is happening right now. Because really, if you had hit me up like 2 years ago, I probably would have just not even replied. Not because I'm a jerk, but just because like I was so focused in on just kind of being in my bubble, you know, like I'm just trying to work, I'm trying to put out content, like that was it, you know, and I don't want to be that way anymore. You know, there's such a larger community out there, and more than anything, like letting people see authentically you, because even if you make great stuff, if the only thing people know you from is like the stuff you put out and the image of what's happening in a video, they're going to start constructing their own backstory for who you are off camera, you know. And I really want to like play a larger role in, you know, talking with other people, being active in the community, and helping others, you know, like talking to more other creators that are starting up and be like, hell yeah, like here's the kind of stuff you need to do, you know, or like here's what worked for me at least, you know. There's just been a big active push for me this year, and it's been, honestly, I think it's actually one of the big contributors to why I have felt better this year, is because I'm starting to feel more like I have a place in it, and I'm not just this guy that like, oh yeah, I have a channel that's doing well, but that's about it.
No, that makes perfect sense, man. And especially, you know, branching out and reaching out to more of the communities, it's effectively a form of paying it forward, and it allows you to gain more introspective, you know, insight on yourself, because like this is the backside of content creating, folks. A lot of days you're going to be recording or at your desk, and it's just going to be you and your monitor or monitors. It kind of depends. It can be a very isolating experience. So, absolutely. And it's very, very easy to get lost in the content you're doing. And actually, I think you and I were talking about that in DMs a couple weeks ago, because it really can get to that point where it's like you're working on something, you look up, well, damn, the week passed, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, time, especially with all the COVID stuff going on right now too. I mean, weekends don't really mean much to me anymore. No, like it's another day, you know. I think we were talking because it was a 3-day weekend, and I was like, oh, we still have those? Like that's going on? Okay. Damn it.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Like it's crazy how, like, you know, I'm working on several projects for this week, and I looked up today and I was like, wow, it's Thursday. I feel like it was just Monday. You know?
No, for sure. I lose track of days all the time as a result of that. Yeah, it's weird when you're in the middle of it, you know. And the other thing too is like, especially for me, what happens with me a lot is that I especially on like my lower points, I definitely have that time where the most frustrating thing is the days that you do a lot, but you don't do a lot. And what I mean by that is you have that writer's block, you have that wall of you're not sure what you're going to do next, and you try working on that, but it doesn't really go anywhere. So you're just kind of spinning the wheels, but you're stuck in place. You know, like those are the ones that really hit me the hardest, because I feel like when I'm actually actively doing stuff all the time, there's that sense of accomplishment at the end still, right? Like you feel like, oh yeah, I got it done. Maybe there's a little extra stress, you know, especially if there's other things happening, like, oh, there's a brand spot, so we got to get that up by this date, and we got to make sure they're happy and I didn't say something wrong or whatever. And like like there's just there's so many different weird kinds of stress that comes sometimes with this, because it's just all over the place. I had a point I was going to, but I think the main thing is just, it's a wild ride. Every day's different.
So, you know, winding down to the last couple of questions, but if you had, actually, no, I'll save that for the next question. So there's this, you know, and I tend to ask a lot of my guests that are very successful content creators, and, you know, you're definitely in the upper echelon of that. And I want to ask, No, of course. I mean, dude, come on. You're the dude. The dude.
I'm sure. I'm a dude. Yeah, I like the Big Lebowski. Sure. Like yeah, what's up?
So my question is, for anyone who wanted, okay, how should I word this? Okay, so for people who want to go into content creating, do you still see it as a viable career form, like right now? Or do you feel like the market is oversaturated?
I was talking about this recently because, being on Clubhouse, I'm sure you've been on there and you see some of the rooms that pop up sometimes that are lots of how to make easy money overnight. And sometimes there's ones where it's like big successful people talking about like, how to break into Twitch or how to break into YouTube, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I want to offer what support and help I can, but the problem is at the end of the day, the situation that I was in when I was able to get into YouTube and grow stuff is not the same situation as today. I can give you my best educated guesses. I can give you the tips that will help make sure that you are on top of making stuff and, want to, are making things that are creatively fulfilling to you and things that might help, make them more successful with the algorithm or how people want to click on things, whatever, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In the day, the problems I deal with in making a video succeed are different than the problems someone coming up brand new fresh are going to have. And it's different than the problems someone who is currently a 10 million sub channel is going to have. Like the algorithm treats us all very differently. Mm-hmm. and the battle is different constantly. And so, I honestly, it's a terrible answer, but it's the one that I feel is most honest for me is I can't tell you if it's viable. I really can't. I can give you the tools that work for me. I can help share what, helped stuff work for me. But at the end of the day, it's a different world already. And it's a different world every 2 years, practically, the landscape is constantly changing. The algorithm changes, who's popular changes, what people are interested changes, what content is out there to work with, whether it's new systems releasing or something big happening in the news happening, like that changes, Mm-hmm. And so I feel bad because I feel like the best thing I can really offer a lot of people are almost just generic platitudes that you'll hear all the time, be consistent, keep your work up, find your unique voice. But it's like, they're kind of platitudes for a reason, like it's like a lot of it is true. And the best you can do is just, you got to be on top of it and lean into it. And like it's a weird thing. And even with, like you were saying, like, I'm a bigger YouTuber and I think I am. And then sometimes I don't, because it's like, there's so many different tiers and stuff, like, who am I compared to like Mr. Beast or something, Mm-hmm. And like, it's a constantly changing field. 1 month I'm focusing on stuff that I think will, again, doing that balance between what works and what is creatively fulfilling. Mm-hmm. But, the battle of what works is also a constantly shifting thing. You're always trying to figure it out. The rules are never the same. There's no one simple formula outside of you found that one niche that you do that's really specific and you're great at it and people seem to love it. And so now it's working out great. That's awesome when you find those situations. Mm-hmm. But not everyone's going to have the luck to fall into that, And so, like with a lot of things, it's opportunity, it's luck, and it's hard work. And the hard work is still extremely important there. I feel like sometimes when people talk about luck, they say it as though like, oh, well, you just got lucky. Like, no, you still absolutely have to put in the work. There's a lot of people who got the opportunities and who had the right setup to, see something and didn't because they didn't put that work in, like the work is absolutely important there, but you just have to recognize too, that like, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to start something and just blow up. Some people will, and that's awesome for those people. I don't wish anything bad for those people. Like that's fantastic for them, but you can't look at those as the examples of like, oh, well, that's just what I'm going to do, because it doesn't work that way, sadly.
No, it just doesn't. I had an instance where one of my friends that was former 2020. I'm gonna say former friend. Basically, they were a very successful Twitch streamer, and they decided they wanted to switch over to doing something else. So they wanted to do podcasting, and they wanted to get more into the political arena. And and do YouTube videos and edgelord type of stuff. So when they, you know, their YouTube channel wasn't exactly big. It was like maybe 1,000, 2,000. And, you know, at the time I just hit 11,000, and right now I'm close to 12. So I view myself as smaller on the YouTube side, but get into where I'm at, that's not easy. Like, not anyone can just get that.
Oh, it takes, so, I mean, yeah. No, I was just going to say, I mean, you know, I'm at 800K right now. And again, I've been in YouTube for basically 11 years. You know, there's plenty of people who have grown way faster than me. And a lot of people who've grown slower too. You know, I feel like I'm actually kind of occupying, I feel like my experience has been decently in the middle. Like 2019 in particular was very nice to me. And that's when I really saw my most explosive growth. But I wouldn't consider my channel to be like a overnight blow up success, you know? And so I do think I actually do occupy that space of like growing, but yeah, that's exactly it. Right. Like it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time.
Yeah. So like with my friend, well, former friend. So with them, so basically what they did, like they wanted help on understanding like video editing, what software to use, and then when it came to podcasting, what outlets to host and all this other stuff. So I helped them with all of that. And they, you know, they railed really hard into the political stuff, a lot of alt-right stuff. And they blew up literally in 1 month or a month and a half. They went from that 1,000, 2,000 to right now they're at 120,000 subs. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, congrats, like on that growth. And one of the things that they ended up saying to me was, yeah, you should probably drop what you're doing because you're never going to get anywhere. They're like, you know, the fact.
That pisses me off. Like that. Like I said at the start with about talking about content creators and the struggles some of them deal with, that kind of thing. Like no one situation is the same. And I hate when people try to do one-to-one comparisons like that, because look, again, I can't tell you how viable it is. And I can tell you it's going to be a lot of hard work and it's not a for sure thing, but I'm never going to tell someone, no, like you're like, it's just going to fall on your face. Like, no, like that's just not true. You know, like again, kind of calling back to that concept of luck a little bit, like, it doesn't hit at the same time for everyone. The opportunity doesn't arrive at the same time for everyone, you know? And the one absolute thing that guarantees you're going to fail is not trying.
Yeah.
That's 100%. You know, I can't guarantee you're going to succeed, but the best way to guarantee failure is not trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh God, I'm boiling right now. Sorry. Because that's the kind of stuff I hate to see people do. Like it's, like, why you got to crush someone's hopes? Like, I'm not going to tell someone to quit their day job and just go all in and make it work magically. No, like, there's realities here to deal with, but like, don't. Like, why would you do that to someone?
I think some people get off on that. And it's the weirdest thing, dude. Like, it's, you know, like, when the person, when she said that to me, I was like, right, so... my response to her was like, right, so for the 4 to 5 years you were trying on YouTube and going nowhere during, like, doing the whole how to grow on Twitch, you know, all that other stuff that a lot of people in the Twitter sphere do, and you weren't growing. I'm like, did someone say that to you? And she's like, no. Like, okay, so because you had a month overnight success, I need to quit? She's like, well, yeah, like the fact that you do this, and this, and you reach out to people and reach out to companies, it just makes your brand look worthless. And, you know, you should be like me, where I just blew up overnight. I'm like, right. But you leaned into something that ultimately is going to bite you coming back around. Like, okay, right. But there's a lot of that. I've actually, and it's crazy because I've gotten that from folks that a lot of people that I know in the gaming sphere have blown up overnight, and I've gotten a lot of that from them, and I've gotten that from some guests I've previously had. They're bigger creators have said that to me, and I'm like, interesting. All right, but I'm paying my bills.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. Well, and that's the thing too, that I think like has to be talked a little bit right here too, right? Is like, what is your determiner of success? Because I would say for me right now, look, obviously I'd like more subs. I'd like more views. I'd like more AdSense or whatever. Yeah, obviously. But I already consider myself to kind of be at a level that I'm pretty happy and content with, you know, because like I said, I'm paying my rent. I got food on the table. I'm paying my bills, you know. If your goal is to just be a superstar or something, sure. But not everyone's reasoning to do this is that, you know. And that's another large part of why I'm trying to be more active in the community, is because, you know, I'm looking at what I've been doing in content creation and where I'm going, and I realize that I don't want to just be someone who churns out content for the sake of paying their bills and that's just it. Like, I really want to help start giving back more and talk to more people and, you know, help in advancing the conversation beyond just simply like, hey guys, here's my thoughts on why you should buy an Xbox versus a PlayStation. Because there's more to offer than just that, you know? And so it depends on your definition of success. I mean, I guess if they define their success as simply as like, oh, well, my plan is to be a 10 million sub channel and, you know, people are going to reference me a lot. Sure, fine. Okay, yeah, that's difficult. That's very hard and achievable for a lot of people. But like, what's wrong with making a living and making content you're happy and proud with, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's, yeah. I feel like that's a heated emotional thing, and we could go on about this for a bit. I think that probably is a good enough, just, you know, if you're trying to get into YouTube, I guess here's one to walk this back to our original topic and not go too deep. If you're looking to break into this field as well, examine why you want to and what your goal with it is.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lot of different ones it can be, whether it's to be educational or to be entertaining, or maybe you do just want to be a big success and get the big bucks or whatever. Sure, great, fine. Like that, if that's what you want, like you do you, you know, I'm not going to, the only time I'm going to give someone crap is when they are actively breaking other people down. That's where my problem comes in. I have no problem with you chasing your dream, but don't start tearing other people down, because we're all different and our metrics of success and what we want are different. So figure out why you want to do this, and that plays a role in all this as well.
Yeah. That could literally be another podcast. Just diving into that, because like there's so much to that, like, and it's just, I feel like it's a conversation. Like I've had this talk with like Louise, and you know, I gotta give a shout out to Louise, because like when that stuff was said to me by that former friend of mine, he was the person I was talking to that helped me like refocus like why I was doing that, because I literally I dropped streaming. I dropped a lot of things just because I'm like, well, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not going anywhere. And it's like between talking to Louise and talking to my wife and ACG, literally like this is why you're doing. You love this. Like, my wife put it in this way. She's like, do you want to go back to where you were working in IT and you're working 17-hour days and you were never home, you're always on call, we never saw each other, and you were miserable? Or do you want to, you know, in the fact of where you are now, where you're making a living, bills are paid, you enjoy what you do, and we get to spend time together? I'm like, that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
So
no, that's really where I come from too. Like, I enjoy that this is my job, you know, that I've been able to make this work. But at the end of the day, and my priorities and why I do this and want it to do well comes from is really much more based in, I guess, what you would call maybe familial success. Like, I want to be able to take care of my family. Like you, I would like to have a kid down the line as well and help with that. And as long as I can support that, I already consider what I do a success. I don't care if I make $1 million or whatever. I mean, it'd be nice to help pay for those things and make sure that, you know, it relieves some stresses, but that's not what I define as what my goal is or what my success is. You know, it's taking care of stuff in my own life and making sure that, you know, if I do gain some degree of clout or presence or whatever, that it's used well and isn't just a like horn to blare all the time about yourself or something, like that's what I want to aim to do, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing.
So the last question I have for you, is outside content creating, gaming. What are some things you like to do? Things that people may not know.
I've been trying to be like I said, I'm trying to be more vocal lately and kind of let people inside my life a lot. I'm really into, this is a very unoriginal thing right now, I'm really into media consumption, but a large part of that is because of the fact that for me, gaming, different people game for different reasons. And for me, I'm really big on story. I love the medium of storytelling, whether it's the form of, film, literature, plays, video games, obviously have become the main medium I really focus on, but I love storytelling. And so that's a large aspect of what I do outside of YouTube. And I'm also very big into just gaming in general. Not simply video games, but tabletop stuff. Board games, Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of other tabletop games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons that people probably wouldn't recognize the names of. Savage Worlds, a lot of OSR stuff. There's a lot of things aside from D&D. But that's really where a lot of my side interests go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's not the most original thing. I'm sorry, I don't have something for you like, I like playing polo on the weekend. I got nothing like that for you. I'm sorry. I don't have a bug collection, but I like watching movies, listening to music.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's really good because there's so much stuff that and especially with media consumption. And I think one of the only good things that's come from COVID is the fact that we are consuming more media, and with movies,
hopefully
anime,
responsibly.
yes, hopefully responsibly. Movies, media, gaming, tabletop gaming, reading. Like, it's really been, I feel like, a time like no other where we can literally, and I look at it in the sense of it's self-investment.
Yeah.
So
it absolutely is. Yeah. Especially, again, responsibly or in the right. Like, I'm not looking to rewatch a sitcom 8 times repeatedly. That's not necessarily what I'm looking to do. I've definitely had those days every now and then because it's comfort food. But yeah, like absolutely media consumption in the form of self-growth, and internalizing stuff, right? Like sometimes it's fun to watch the pretty lights and that's it. But like there is meaning to glean from a lot of stuff because that's what storytelling is all really about. It's about instilling lessons and thought-provoking ideas, and it's a very important part of what makes us who we are. Beyond just simply the latest Marvel movie looks cool. I enjoy that too. There's more too, though.
Right. So I lied. I actually have one final question for you.
Oh, I don't know if I want to answer it. You said we were done.
I know, right?
What's up?
Did you have fun?
Yeah, no, this is great.
Awesome.
This is great.
Awesome, man. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go? Floor is yours. Here's the microphone.
Oh, no, I wasn't ready for freedom. The unbearable weight of being able to make my own choices. The most recent Nintendo Direct was awesome for me. I'm sorry, everyone else. Triangle strategy is the greatest thing I have seen in a long time. I'm so hype. I'm sorry if you wanted Breath of the Wild 2 reveals.
Oh, man. And where can people find you? I'm also going to include it in the description below, but yeah.
Yeah. So again, all my stuff is just under my name because I am not a creative person in that respect. You can find me on YouTube as Kevin Kenson, Kenson. You can figure out Kevin. I go by that same name on Twitter, on Instagram. Those are really my 3 most active things. I'm looking to do more stuff eventually. I've been really debating actually doing some Twitch stuff, not for game streaming because I cannot divide my attention that way, but just to chat and interact more with fans and that kind of deal. But for now, those are the main 3 places you'll find me.
All right. And no TikTok videos?
No TikTok. I'm leaving that all to Christine. You can find Christine. I will shout out my wonderful fiance who streams on Twitch as Christine Anloff, and I'm pretty sure her TikTok goes by the same one. So
All right, and yeah, man. Then that's the episode. You guys can catch this episode of Kasanova Podcast along with many others on every major podcasting outlet, from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, also on Amazon Music. And if you want to catch this in video format, it's on youtube.com/Mikhail Kasanova. And for my guest, Kevin Kenson, the one and only.
Pretty sure.
The one and only Kevin Kenson. If you want to find links to his stuff for his YouTube channel, social media links, make sure you go and follow him on everything up to his channel. Amazing content creator. Kevin, it's been an honor having you on the show. Definitely got to have you back on again. And dude, anytime if you ever come out here to Hawaii, we don't have this whole COVID situation going on. If it clears up, if you ever come out here, let me know, dude. I will take you to the best udon spot in all of the Pacific.
Oh wait, I didn't talk about how much I love food, because that is a very important aspect as well. And now you've got me sold. No, just in terms of outside of media consumption, food. I love food. Tell me more about the udon, please.
Oh my god! So we got this place. We got this place called Marukame. It is the best. So like my friend,
I think we have one in like near Little Tokyo. I feel like I've heard that name. I haven't been, but I think I've heard of. I feel like I've heard that name, or maybe I'm thinking something similar.
I think there is one in Little Tokyo. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got that, and we've got so it's like the best curry udon, or just udon in general. So my house, our house is like right next to like everything. Like we're 2 minutes from Waikiki Beach, and we've got, if you want tacos or any Hispanic food, it's right there to the left. If you want burgers, you got that. If you want pizza, any type of Italian, you want, Asian cuisine, you want Indian cuisine, everything is within a 2-minute radius of our house, dude. It's
beautiful. Music to my ears.
It's so crazy. Like, so my friends, like David Hayter and Ruben Langdon, who does Dante from Devil May Cry, whenever they come out here, they
just minor name drops, no big deal. It's just my buddies, Let's like, you're just David Hayter, just hanging out. Might have heard of him from Guyver.
Like when they come out here, like we my wife and I, we take them to all the different places. And they're like, man, this is crazy how much good food you have in your vicinity. And we're like, yeah, that's Hawaii for you.
I feel like we could go on about this for a while, but I don't want us to say bye 7 times.
I know, right? I know.
At least the audience. We're going to talk more about this after. Wait, we're going to stop recording. We're going to keep talking. Don't worry.
Definitely.
I'm not going to put the audience through that.
So yeah. So with that being said, we hope you guys have a great one. Have a blessed day. Do whatever makes you happy, as long as it's responsible. Consume content responsibly. And we'll catch y'all on the next one.
Later. Oh, and thanks again for having me. I feel like I should say thanks. Oh no, did we stop already? Did I not say thanks?
I didn't stop yet.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I hope it was informative, engaging, and you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you go ahead and leave a rating and a review. It greatly helps out the podcast and helps the platforms that we're on go ahead and promote us more so that more people can check it out. And if you're wondering what all platforms we're on, aside from what you've listened to it on, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. And if you want to support the podcast, then we've got Patreon, so patreon.com/Mikhail Kasanova, which allows us to continue doing what we're doing. If you're looking for this in video format, we're also available on twitch.tv/Mikhail Kasanova, as well as youtube.com/Mikhail Kasanova. So with all that being said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast and the #1 podcast in the Pacific, the Kasanova Podcast. You have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.